Hi, my name is Jenny Hughes. I'm a trauma psychologist and the founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective. Today, I want to teach you about a skill that comes from cognitive processing therapy. And it helps us to understand when the emotion of guilt is helpful or healthy versus when it is not. This is something that's really important because culturally, we so often feel guilty about things that maybe don't require that emotion. And so, understanding when it is an appropriate, healthy, and helpful response to a situation versus when it's not, I hope is going to lift some of the weight that maybe you're experiencing when it comes to guilt. Okay, so cognitive processing therapy is an evidence based treatment for trauma and PTSD. And it uses cognitive behavioral therapy concepts and skills to help us understand the way that trauma and PTSD change the beliefs that we have about ourselves, others, and the world. And a big part of that is understanding our beliefs about what caused the different traumatic events we've experienced in our lives and what our role is in any of these traumatic events. Now, when it comes to the emotion of guilt, we're going to talk about here today when is it a helpful and healthy and necessary emotion versus when is it not? It's so easy for us to jump to guilt when something bad happens and then we say, "Oh, I feel so guilty that X, Y, and Z occurred." But guilt may not be the most necessary or helpful emotion in a given situation. So, when we think about these three levels, the unforeseeable, responsibility, and fault or blameworthiness, I'm going to give you an example to help you remember the difference between these. Now, I want you to pretend that I'm out driving my car and I'm paying attention, my hands are on the wheel, I'm not distracted. There's not even music playing in my car. I'm like totally zoned in and know exactly what I'm doing. And all of a sudden, a kid runs out in front of my car and I hit him. There's no way I could have predicted that that would happen. And I'm going to feel terrible about it. I'm going to feel grief and sadness. And that is a really healthy and normal reaction to have to that kind of a situation. Now, the next level is this responsibility level. This is where, let's say I'm driving again, right? And I'm texting. I'm not supposed to be texting. I know that that means I'm distracted. And all of a sudden, that kid runs out and I hit him with my car. I did not mean to hit him. I didn't intend that to happen, but I definitely played a role in it because I was texting, right? I'm for sure going to regret the fact that I was texting. And I'm also going to feel a lot of sadness and grief and feel terrible. This is a place where a lot of times with this middle level, we will inappropriately or inaccurately feel guilty. But the difference between this responsibility and regret level and this third one, fault, blameworthiness, and guilt, is someone's intent. So this level is I leave the house. My entire goal of that day is to find a kid and run him over and hit him with my car. I am intending to cause harm. I'm intending to cause that outcome. And when I do that, I should feel guilty because that emotion is telling me that I chose to do something very, very harmful and wrong to hurt someone else. Now, this having this be a healthy experience of guilt is very different from the way that we often talk about it. Guilt ends up being this word that we throw around kind of like love, like, oh, I love apples, just like I love my children. Those are two very different kinds of love. And so is guilt when it comes to situations where we intended to cause harm versus situations where maybe we couldn't have predicted that it would happen and it makes sense that we feel awful, or we played a role and we regret that it happened, but we never intended to have that negative outcome. I want you to know that the first time you learn about the healthy and helpful role of guilt in our lives, it can kind of be like your brain just exploded. And so it's okay if you're feeling maybe kind of conflicted about this or you're not really sure kind of how to take all of this in. I encourage you to watch this video a couple times over and really kind of think about when it comes to traumas that you've experienced in your life, when has guilt been an appropriate, a helpful, a healthy emotional reaction versus not. And especially when you think about those experiences now, is guilt something that is giving you feedback because you chose to do something that caused harm to someone or something else? Or is it maybe kind of this response that just comes up out of nowhere because you've been taught to feel guilty about things? This is something to definitely talk to your trauma therapist about. You might be watching this because your trauma therapist is a member of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, and so they're going to be well aware of this skill because this is something that I teach them as well. And so be sure to bring this up with them, explore it with them, see if it's something you can't work on in trauma therapy. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe so you can watch all of the other tools and techniques that I share here of all the things that I do in my own work as a trauma psychologist. Take care.